Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Star Wars update. This was a huge week in Disneyland news, more specifically Star Wars Land news. There was so much stuff that came out this week that it's impossible to cover it all. It was a massive news dump from Disneyland on giving all the details about the shops, the costumes, the merchandise that you can buy, the food that you can eat, the drinks that you can drink, and where you can get the alcohol. But aside from all of that, and going through and showing you what you can find at several other, quality blogs and YouTube channels around the internet, the bigger picture of Disneyland is starting to come very clear with their intentions of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. The big picture is becoming very obvious to me, and I didn't completely see it, but the details that have leaked this week made me realize that there's this big complaint that we hear a lot. I'm so sick of the properties. Disneyland's never going to make anything without properties anymore. Does everything have to be attached to a movie or a toy? And I understand that. I'm never going to argue with you that Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion is the greatest part of the park. That original storytelling, characters that we only know because we walk through the gates at 1313 Disneyland Drive. But as we're starting to see the detailing on the Galaxy's Edge, it's starting to become more clear that there's more old in this new area of the park than what we maybe once thought. And it's maybe a bit closer to the magic of pirates, the history of Haunted Mansion, than we thought. I'll explain it to you this way. With the new park coming, we're seeing something that's quite different than what we saw with Pixar Pier and Radiator Springs. Very different. And that it's an environment that is somewhat familiar, but largely brand new to us. So when we look at the video that was released at D23 of the model that all of us just got to lurk over, that in there, Black Spire Outpost, this marketplace, this little well-designed civic layout of the future, it's pretty massive. It's pretty big. And unlike Main Street, USA, where it's one shot down the center of it, it's got lots of little arteries. It's very reminiscent of what we know with New Orleans Square. As you peer over this, you can kind of see all the different little shops and marketplaces in different buildings, and it's laid out in a very curious design pattern. All the hooks and curves making you want to go in and explore it further and further. This little marketplace, the Black Spire Outpost, with all of its different shops and curiosities, it has a lot of new storytelling in it. Yeah, it's based off of the Star Wars franchise and what we know, but a lot of people ask, why didn't they retell something? Look at that little walkway in there. Why didn't they retell something from one of the other movies? Why did they build a new land? Well, think about it. If they showed us what we already knew, then that would be the complaint that everybody has. Just property-based attractions. But taking a property and telling us something new, giving us creatures and characters that we can only meet here, that's the perfect hybrid of the past with the technology of the future. So as all the news started to come out this week, I got very, very excited about the actual marketplace, the Black Spire Outpost, which is starting to largely feel as if it's the third attraction of the park. So let's dive in. All right, so the Galaxy's Edge takes place on, I believe, the planet Batuu. The Black Spire Outpost is this little market area that we see there in the front, with all of its domed buildings, with its unique access points, with all the lush landscaping, the different bridges. It feels very, very multidimensional because it's always twisting and turning around in a very different architecture than what we know here in the U.S. The idea of building the cul-de-sac of these rotted out space rock massive tree trunks, it really has created a great barrier between us and the world outside. That's classic Disneyland Design 101, when Walt decided to put the berm around the park while digging out the creeks and the different ponds and the rivers of America to not let people see in, but also to not let people see out. That is classic Disneyland. But when we look at these different shops and the way that it's laid out, it reminds me a lot of New Orleans Square, where it's simply just a few different small streets and corridors, but the way that it moves around and has so many different cuts in it, it's a land of adventure all unto itself. When you look at these different buildings and the classic Disney, like walk under the bridge frames everything beyond it. At this moment, you'll probably have already gone under so many different overpasses that you'll feel like you're just going further and further into the heart of this part of the park. You can see the Millennium Falcon attraction, the Smuggler's Run over there. But the attractions, they're great. Don't get me wrong. I love the rides at Disneyland, but the lands are what we consume the most. If I go to the park tonight, and I will walk through New Orleans Square. I will walk through Frontierland. I will walk through Adventureland. I don't know that I'll stand in line and ride any of those attractions. To me, I love that Disneyland feels like a little city. This is only going to embrace that even more. Here we see the cul-de-sac holding in the attraction. But looking at the detail at some of these shops, now that we've seen the merchandise that's going to go on them, some of the sampling of the food, it makes it feel so much more like a immersed land. So this is the sort of a galleyway into where we could start to discover some of the shops. What do you say we look at the streets and some of the renderings that we have? Because now that we know there will be street vendors, there'll be interior stores we can go into. And, just this sort of like, it's not steampunk, it's not old, it feels vaguely familiar. I mean, if you look, that appears to be two different drinking fountains, but with the mind meld of all that liquid and maybe a monster lurking inside. I love all the canopies and the tapestries to make it feel that it's desert, but somewhat different and exotic. You can also see that there's a little bit of plant work that is growing on top of those pipes, just really lending into the idea that this isn't something new, but something that is indeed very, very old. Also on the bottom left, you can see those different little like connection ports where you could either plug in a hose to drain out these fluids or pump more fluid back in, whichever way that it actually works. Hey, Chris, thanks for hanging out with me today. When you look at this image right here of all the different meats and items that you can buy, when I actually did a reverse Google image search on this, it brought up real world photos of different marketplaces in India and showing different sort of street experiences that are being imitated here, but with the Star Wars facade over the top of it. But I'm loving all of the sort of these architecture, these refinery type machines that don't quite make sense in our world, but make this world feel more real. I also love the fact that there is a spacecraft up there. I am praying that there are drones flying over the top of the Rock Mountain walls and that it feels even more like a space transport with a little bit of aircraft actually cruising around. But when you see this walk-up stand and how it's detailed, and I've seen the actual photos of this being constructed, and just all those balls and sort of the brass work, it's just, they're using all materials we understand, but this, I believe, is a rendering of where you'll be able to go up and buy the different flavors of milk, the blue milk, the green milk. It just looks like so much more than just a stand to go up and watch something. I love the idea that the road could be, made of different types of stone and blocks and have a different sort of grout in between it than what we're used to. And I enjoy seeing these different shaped doorways and just all the canisters and just the small detailing on everything. If you think about New Orleans Square, what makes it so special is that, we all know that it's really just maybe 3 or 4 different buildings, but the fact that every 10 feet it's cut up to look like a different row house, and there's all these extra balconies and windows and doorways, some that go somewhere, some that don't. This feels like a very realized version of that. Scrolling up in this machine, you see the this building, you see more of the tapestry, more of the technology. This part of the park is going to work with the Disney app, the Play Disney Parks. If you have that app on your phone or an iPad, you're going to be able to go through and experience even more with all the immersion that we've heard about, where the land is interactive. Many of us were thinking, well, that's us with cast members. But using technology through the app, everybody can kind of be going through and having their own experience based on algorithms and where you go and where you've been and how it could all stitch that experience together. Now we're inside one of these domed buildings. You can tell by sort of the curvature. They released basically a line listing of what a lot of these different places are going to be called. And I don't want to sit here and read you a bunch of stuff, but we already did see the milk stand, the place to go to get your farm fresh blue milk or green milk direct from Boo Boo Wamba Family Farms. I mean, that right there, the milk stand alone has so much detailing and sort of this fictional history that we're looking at. I believe this one right here is I can't seem to find it with my notes in front of me, but I believe this is the Docking Bay 7 Food and Cargo, where they're using a motor from a racer pod to heat food in sort of this recreation of things. But Oga's Cantina, Docking Bay 7 Food and Cargo, Ronto Roasters. This is that one. The Ronto's Roasters, a recycled pod racing engine, fires up a spit of exotic meats meticulously turned by a former smelter droid. So you can actually see the droid over there that will probably just be, making it look like he's turning around the spit roast. His name is 8DJ8. Guests can even sample some of the tasty Ronto fare. I mean, just this idea of having droids perform different tasks that are being automated by something else. If you look over on the left, you can see the bar where you could go up. But always remember, when you go into a Disneyland shop, look up. When you look up, that's where they can really do the storytelling, because no one can touch it. We see an exotic sort of plant life over in the archway there, those little slats letting in daylight. We see a bridge going across the top, the steam, the different hose for ventilation. I mean, this just looks absolutely amazing. And it's not an attraction, it's a food stand. Here in this shop, you just see tons of items stacked about. You see all kinds of storytelling going up into the sky. It looks like there's going to be a lot of natural light that sort of shines in these places, but also the amount of love that's been put into the distress of these shops. Here's another one, the Oga's Cantina. I don't think that's what we're looking at, but I just wanted to read these off to you slowly. Place for guests to grab a beverage, catch up on the latest gossip while R3X, formerly a Star Speeder pilot and the original Star Tours, DJ a collection of new music. Just like that kind of storytelling and different names of places. It's just going to be so fantastic. Over to the right, it looks almost like a Star Wars like thrift store. This is the one that I was just talking about. You can see the DJ up there that'll be playing the music and in this bar. And a lot of the different vlogs and blogs this week covered the different beverages you can get. For the first time, you can get alcohol inside of Disneyland, outside of Club 33, where that's a members only area. But there will be alcohol served, and there'll also be non-alcoholic cocktails that embrace the same sort of spirit. And I just thought, while everybody else this week was showing the new drinks, the new foods, the new uniforms, I thought I would just dive more into how this feels very familiar and how it's built off the chassis of Disneyland and the lands that we've experienced in the past. Once again, you see a use of natural light with these force lighting, this giant machine here in the middle of the room. Lord only knows what it does and how interactive it may be. Once again, walking up to it with the app, you might get a different experience than me because you've already been on Smuggler's Run that day. Or maybe you've already done the Rise of the Resistance and you've helped break free. So you might get an entirely different experience when you point your iPhone at this than I do. Nate, you're absolutely correct. So much layering, so much storytelling, just roughing it up and giving it a little bit of grime. It's more than that. It is truly an immersive experience. And if you look below the bar and behind the patrons of the bar, just that that system of fluids running around, and you know, it's like a microbrewery, but very different than what we know. And I would love to know how much of it is functional and how much of it is facade, and how the functional part fits inside of the facade. And just looking at the lantern in the far left-hand corner and the different, you know, lighting and ventilation pieces that hang down, they have gone through every detail to make this feel real, but done it through a very, very different lens. And I do hope that there are cast members with face tattoos. I hope that the old SoundCloud rappers can retire at Disneyland because they'll have face tattoos. It worked out for everybody in the end. Get your face tattooed, kids. So this is very interesting. I'm going to be doing a video in the future about the technology of the lightsaber. There were patents that were filled. There were different ideas of what these custom lightsabers will cost, but these aren't the toy ones where you go like this and the plastic shoots out at you. This is actually using a very interactive technology. They want this to be their version of the Harry Potter wand, that you pick up the lightsaber and it feels real, and that you can duel or do different tasks with it. I'm not sure if this is going to be done with VR goggles. I'm not sure if it's going to be done with a very new and proprietary form of light map imaging, but there's going to be something very special going on in this area here. And this, I believe, is called Savvy's Workshop. Hand-built lightsabers. Guests come to the workshop to meet with the Gatherers, a secretive group of people who have dedicated their lives to restoring balance in the galaxy by passing on their knowledge of Jedi lore and the Force. The workshop master guides guests to customize and build their own unique lightsabers and instructs them on the ways of the Jedi. So, you know, once again, this might be a shop that you have to book time in, stand in an insane line to get inside of, but it feels like it will be worthy to go in there and not the RIP Toys R Us lightsaber that we know from the past. This is a droid workshop where you can go in there, you use either your app or those computers that you see there. You custom pick your parts, and then you can see workers on the other side that are assembling your droid. If you just look at all the different lighting mechanisms and different like fictional power tools that are hanging down from the ceiling, it's wild. Once again, we're seeing a lot of use of natural light. One of our greatest resources here in Southern California is a whole lot of sun, and if they sort of use the windows right and do sort of a patina type paint style on the glass, they'll literally be able to, even on a bright sunny day, make sort of these specialized rays come down, which I think that if you go into these shops and they're naturally sort of dark, lit with like beams of natural light, but then also all the different lighting and video display boards, the lighting itself could be very, very interesting. I do know that there are going to be droids cruising around the land and in some of the shops. So maybe this R2 that's up on the stage, like maybe he actually can cruise around inside that railing area and knows, you know, has it all digitally mapped out and knows his surface area that he's allowed to travel through. And that would actually give a droid a way to move around without guests interfering with it. So very fascinated just to see these shops and how it all comes together, but even more so just to walk around in that environment. This was one of my favorite photos just because of the overall scale of this shop and just the detailed storytelling of old recycled pieces and parts everywhere. Just really some fascinating, you know, interior design here. This is the opposite of the photo earlier that was the sort of thrift store looking area. But I'm happy to see so many of you guys over in the live chat as excited as I am. And, you know, look around the internet. You won't have to go far to find articles about the different costumes and cocktails. I think D23 did a great job of covering it in Mice Chat as well. But I really just wanted to sort of look at the design and sort of the inspiration and the emotion that is being put into this park. And make the argument with you that a lot of people complain about, oh, what lands are we going to see, and what are we, what happened to the old day of telling stories? But I feel like it's in here. And we don't know who we're going to meet. We don't know what creatures we're going to bump into. But I think when we look through all of this, it feels new. It feels like Disney is back to letting new stories be told in Disneyland. Obviously it's based off of a franchise that we know, but all of this is new and exciting to us. And we will create memories with these characters in these spaces that are separate to us than the actual films. And I think that's the really big win here. Whereas unlike Radiator Springs, there's not a lot of imagination. It feels like you're walking into the movie. They have given us a completely new landscape. New products, new foods, new people, new characters, new experiences that we're going to get to share with our loved ones. And once we go through here, this will feel like Disneyland. It'll feel like New Orleans Square, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted Mansion. We will come to know experiences that are separate from the cinematic universe, yet still attached, still canon, I hope. But we'll know these different experiences based off exploring this land and going through there with our best friends and family and the people that we love the most. So I'm really excited. I'd love to see in the comments below, do you think that this will be much like a New Orleans Square? Do you think that this will be a new land, or do you think that it's just what people complain about, more properties in the park? I'm really excited. I think this week and all the details that we got show us that there was so much TLC put in here of, let's do something new. This is the biggest build out in the park's history, but let's keep it tethered to the core of the values that is Disneyland. And sort of the values in which it was built on, all of the ideas that Walt and his early team embraced and embodied when they built out the park with a lot of TLC. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you had fun looking at this different perspective. Go check out all the different blogs and different videos. There's so much news that dropped this week, but hopefully after hanging out and watching this video, it'll all make sense under this lens that I put it through. Hey, thank you so much for coming to my page. Like, share, do this, do that, do this, do that. Don't forget, smash like, blah 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 blah. All that stuff people say that we tune